So first, though, we're gonna basically highlight the art in the White House with Sarah Kane. And let's go ahead. And Sarah, if you can unmute yourself, and we'll get started.
Great. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Hello. A very historic week ahead of us. This photo behind me actually is a photo of President Truman's renovation of the White House between 1948 and 1952. And he built the White House to resemble kind of the look that we know it today. So when one thinks of art inside the White House, the mind usually goes to presidential portraits. Presidential portraits are how the people familiarize themselves with their presidents. So if we're talking about presidential portraits, the most famous is this full-length portrait of George Washington. This is called the Lansdowne portrait, done in 1796. And this has been in the White House since almost day one, when the Adams moved in. And this was also shortly after Washington, D.C. became the official capital of the country. This portrait is done by Gilbert Stuart, who was a portrait painter and has a long history of painting presidents and their families. And at the time, it was kind of a thing to have your portrait done by him. People were anxious to have their portraits painted by him, but Washington was never anxious. In fact, he didn't even really want his portrait done. Stuart would often talk to his subjects as he painted them to try and bring life and emotion out, but Washington was a particularly hard nut to crack. He just kind of sat for his portrait when he needed to, but I think he had more important things on his mind, like governing a brand new country. However, it is said that once Stuart brought up horses, Washington started to open up. So this portrait is just full of imagery. The chair behind him has the presidential seal on it. Washington is in civilian clothes versus military clothes, emphasizing that he is a president for the people rather than a general, but he still has his sword of command. And the biggest symbol of all is the rainbow behind him. And this is really striking because it kind of sticks out from the rest of the color palette of the portrait. The rainbow represents the rainbow from Genesis after the flood, when God says, quote, "I will never again bring down such destruction on the earth." And this symbol resurfaced again during the Civil War. And honestly, you can even think about the rainbow symbol in this last year, in this last week or so, in terms of destruction on earth. So it has really great and important meaning in our country's history. And something really remarkable about this portrait is that it's one of the only objects that survived the fire in the White House during the War of 1812. The British were coming up the Potomac River to invade Washington, D.C., and James Madison, the president at the time, had already fled Washington. So Dolly Madison, the first lady who was still there, had it quickly loaded on the back of a truck and driven into the Virginian countryside, where it sat in storage for a few years while the White House was rebuilt. So I wanted to show this painting quickly. This is a watercolor painting done by Rufus Porter called The President's House, and it celebrates the newly rebuilt White House after the British burned it down in 1814. I just love how joyful and bright this is, with almost a childlike sense to it, with the sun's face radiating over the whole painting. And this was made in 1824. And a fun fact is that the painter Rufus Porter went on to create the magazine Scientific American in 1845. And just another quick note is that we know now that it's kind of common or customary that the current president and first lady make cosmetic or interior changes to the White House to reflect the styles and taste of the time. And I just had to include this tidbit. President Chester Arthur during the 1880s called on Louis C. Tiffany of Tiffany & Co., who I presented on a few weeks ago, to transform a number of the White House spaces, including the entrance hall, the transverse hall, and the blue room with his signature colored glass. So if we go back to presidential portraits, they were the start of art in the White House, but these technically are now part of the National Portrait. So presidential portraits are the start of art in the White House, but these technically now are part of the National Portrait Gallery, which is not part of the White House art collection. And it wasn't until Jackie Kennedy that the White House was officially considered a museum and had special art curated and preserved. She founded the White House Historical Association, which is a private nonprofit that works in conjunction with the National Park Service. So this is one of the most renowned paintings in the White House collection. It's called The Avenue in the Rain, painted by Childe Hassam in 1917. And Hassam has 6 permanent paintings in the White House collection. And so this piece depicts a rainy Fifth Avenue draped in American flags. At the time, Hassam was part of the, quote, 10 American painters, which was a group of painters that took influence from French art. So one of the biggest French artists at the time was Claude Monet, who Hassam took much inspiration from, although he hated being called an American impressionist. But we can see that this painting follows many of the signature stylistic elements of Impressionism. We can see the kind of the wash of color by using these small blended strokes is the most apparent element of this piece, as are the American flags. This painting was made in February of 1917 at a time when American patriotism was growing rapidly. This piece was finished just a couple months before the US declared war against Germany and intervened in World War I. And this painting was donated to the White House collection in 1963 and hung in JFK's blue-themed president's bedroom, as well as the president's dining room. And it also hung in the Oval Office during the Clinton and Obama presidencies. So Art in the White House offers kind of a glimpse into the deep history of this nation. And today was just a very small sampling of some of that art. So I encourage everyone, if you're interested, to look through the White House Historical Association's website. They have slideshows, podcasts, lots of different resources. It's kind of easy to get lost in the history, but I highly recommend if you have some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was fascinating. Is the art in the White House considered like a part of a national museum?
Yes, it is. They have special exhibits and they work to curate special pieces and preserve different things.
Huh, very cool. Do we have any questions?
AJ Al Munson.
Hi, Al.
Morning. Just a comment to Sarah's first picture. Many of us have done remodels on our home, and everybody knows about a remodel or two. I saw a picture during the time of the Truman remodeling where there was a small bulldozer working inside. It was a remodel of everything but the exterior walls and probably the roof.
Wow, that's incredible.
A big task, a big task.
Which president undertook the remodeling? Did you mention?
Truman.
Truman.
Here, I'll
Okay.
pull the photo back up.
Great. And did they live in the Blair House at the time while they were doing the remodeling, or were they living in the White House?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, I guess it was the Blair House because this was a major undertaking.
Yeah, and I know some of our folks on the town hall have actually, because of the positions they've held and have the privilege to have walked through and considered the White House part of their office. Would certainly love to hear from some of you if you have any comments about the artwork that you've seen.
And
Jay, can you unmute yourself? Do you recall some of the artwork that when you spent your time in the White House?
Well, there was only a few because I didn't go into the galleries where they used to hang most of it, just in the Oval Office, the Roosevelt Room, and some of the others. They would put some of the artwork in there. And they also spread it around over in the old executive office building called the Eisenhower Office Building. The thing that I remarked on most was I'd been in foreign countries where you've seen pictures of the king on one wall and the queen on another. Right after Clinton came in, they would have a picture of Hillary on one wall and Bill on the other, which has never saw it before, ever before or since, where they put pictures of the first lady up as if she's a reigning dignitary.
Oh, wow. And when you spent your time there, what was in the Oval Office, if there's anything notable there?
It's a lot smaller than you think.
yeah,
The cabinet office, the Roosevelt Room, is much smaller than you think. And it probably, I don't know what office you're in right now, AJ, but I don't know whether the cabinet office would be that big or that small. The cabinet office is probably only about, maybe 25 by 12, 15.
Oh, okay.
Small
Yeah. Huh.
And it was weird.
Yeah,
But
I was just going to say the same thing. What's striking about the West Wing is really how small it is. It's basically the size of a nice suburban house, basically. What I remember most by art was in the Roosevelt Room, there was a terrific Remington.
Oh, Remington. Oh, cool. Huh.
It'd be interesting to find out how many people on the call have actually been at the White House.
Have others on this call been there as well?
Just to tour it.
Yeah. My tour there was, I think, maybe 40 years ago, so I have no memory of it. I think.
Hey, Sarah, question for you. Hey, Sarah, Dave Monero here. How much art was lost in the fire? You said that one was saved, but how much art was lost in the fire? Did they catalog that and actually know how much was lost?
They didn't have like a special catalog, I guess you could say, but pretty much everything was lost in the fire. They kind of were starting, the Lansdowne portrait was one of the only things saved. I think some other like special documents were saved, but in terms of art, they didn't really have a catalog yet. So it's not known, but there was a lot of destruction to the White House. Yeah.
Sarah, do you recall which first lady or president chose the Georgia O'Keeffe to hang?
I do not know that.
I think that was Hillary, wasn't
Was
it?
it Hillary Clinton?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Hillary Clinton.
It's a nice selection.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
I just have a comment. My comment is, Sarah, thanks for mentioning the National Portrait Gallery. For anyone who has not been there, every single portrait of every president is in there, and it's a major unveiling when that happens. So of course, I don't know how major the next unveiling will be, but certainly it's a national treasure. And I think I live in the area, so I have been up there I probably go 5 or 6 times a year just to see that one exhibit. There's something you can always pick out. If you're ever in DC, make that one of your first stops. It's an American treasure. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And yes, we'll soon have a new portrait.
Right. I agree with Rick. It's amazing when you go and look at the same pictures more than once, the things you see that you didn't see the first or second time that you actually, went and looked at them.
True. Thank you for that suggestion, Rick. That's a great suggestion. It's been a while since I've been in the National Portrait Gallery. And thank you, Greg and Jay, for your comments on the time you spent in the White House and what you saw there. Much appreciated. Any other comments or questions? Oh, one more there. I see someone raising their hand. Just unmute yourself.
Hi, it's me. It's Jane, AJ.
Hi, Jane.
And I just wanted to follow on Rick's comment by encouraging everybody you can even look it up online, to see Obama's portrait because it's so unusual. Former President Obama. It's against a green background, and embedded in the background are the flowers from his native Hawaii, from Kenya. It's pretty interesting symbolically. I'll just leave it like that.
All right, I'm sure right at the town hall, we're going to check it out. Okay, so I think this was our 35th Art Talk. So this actually is incredibly popular. And our next week Art Talk is going to be the art of collage. It's going to be Rauschenberg, and that'll be quite interesting actually. So we're exploring different media and different types of art this year. And so next week's the 36th Art Talk will be just as interesting as today's. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.